Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to the webinar on transforming business processes, examples of Power Apps. I think, as everyone knows, Power Apps are becoming more prevalent in everyday life now. We're certainly seeing a rise in requests for different automations of various processes, and using ourselves internally. I thank Dougie Wood from Valto, who's a Microsoft MVP, for joining us, and he's going to talk us through what the Power Apps are and also some real-life examples of how they're used in different businesses. So, Dougie, just hand over to you.
Thank you, Richard. So, hi everyone. As I say, this webinar, I'm going to be talking to you about Power Apps and also giving you some real-world examples of Power Apps as well, so you can actually see how people are using them in their sort of day-to-day working lives. So, first off, what am I going to be talking about? So, what is Power Apps? There's multiple different types of Power Apps. And we're going to be talking about the key kind of types of apps first, and then showing actual examples of each of the types of Power Apps as we go through. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end, so there will be some time for any questions that you might have. So if you've got any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. And at the end, when we come to the Q&A, if you would like to come off mute and ask the questions in person, you can do that as well by using the raise hand feature. So a couple of key takeaways from today's webinar. You'll be able to identify the different types of Power Apps. There's 3 core types of Power Apps, and you'll be able to understand the 3 different types, why you would pick one over the other, and what would fit your solution a bit best. Also, you're going to get some ideas of Power Apps use cases. So it's all well and good kind of hearing about Power Apps, but actually knowing how the real world application of them is used, and maybe potentially how some of your competitors are using them to get ahead with making these more efficient and streamlined. It's always good to know. And at the end of this, hopefully you'll have some thoughts on how you could potentially use Power Apps within inside of your own organization. Now, the examples, I've got quite a few. I've got about 10 examples to go through today. Take each of them with a bit of a pinch of salt in terms of when you see an example of an application that I'm showing you, obviously the context of it will be a certain use case, but actually the functionality and the features and the way that it works could be applied to all sorts of different business processes. So as I say, take it with a pinch of salt and think how it could potentially be applied in other areas. So my name is Dougie. I'm the creative director at Valto. So Valto are a Microsoft partner, and we specialize in Power Apps and helping organizations deploy Power Apps properly, essentially. So we help a lot of people, sometimes that have been dabbling with Power Apps already, and they now need to get their applications production ready, and they want to use Microsoft's best recommended standards. I'm also a Microsoft MVP, so I spend a lot of my own time researching, speaking at events, creating video content and things like that. So I'm always on the kind of cutting edge of kind of what is going on with Microsoft tech. So what is Power Apps? So if you've never heard of Power Apps before, what is it in a nutshell? So it's a low-code platform. Power Apps is Microsoft's low-code tool for rapid app development. And now what we mean by low-code is that they're all built using basically Excel formulas. So if you think about how Excel formulas are put together, that's how Power Apps is put together. A lot of the kind of way that the Power Apps comes together is more like a drag and drop functionality with, as I say, these types of Excel style formulas, rather than needing to know any heavy programmer types of languages. And as a result of this means that we can actually build applications much quicker than traditional forms. So before Power Apps, if you were to go through a traditional kind of app development, you'd be talking months, maybe years to build out some of the apps that I'm going to be showing you today. Whereas actually with some of these apps, production level apps are ready in weeks. Sometimes they kind of the minimal viable product element of it, or a proof of concept, can be done in days. So it's really quick and simple to put together. It also allows for really great use of data integration. It connects with various data sources, streamlining data access. So a lot of what we do is we use data that lives inside of Microsoft 365. So maybe it lives inside of SharePoint or Dataverse as Microsoft's offerings. But you might have data in other areas as well, like SQL, or pulling data from other third-party applications and pulling those into your system, or integrating it with a third-party website, for example. Um, the benefits of Power Apps as well is that it's user friendly. And when you're actually building them, it offers a drag and drop interface for easy app customization. So, although Valto, we offer a full kind of service of building applications for our customers, we also help by plugging in skill gaps where there are teams of people already out building applications, which Microsoft refer to as citizen developers, because there's a lot of people out there who on top of their day job, are also out building apps to try and make their lives easier and building over time. So we tend to find a lot of people in the kind of finance kind of sort of areas being really good with Power Apps, because the knowledge of how Excel works is transferable to Power Apps. As I say, it's cross-platform as well, so you can use it on multiple different devices. You could use it in a web browser. You could use it on a mobile phone or a tablet, for example. And it works on both iOS and Android. It's also a key part of the overarching what we call Power Platform, which has got other products, not just Power Apps in it. So you've got the likes of Power BI, which basically is where it kind of surfaces a dashboard of information. So you can use the likes of Power Apps to collect data, then use what they call Power Automate to maybe have some sort of approval workflow or notifications or reminders and things like that. And then it can be sort of generated into a dashboard using Power BI. And that's what they call the Power Platform. It's a suite of the Power products. So at a high level, that is essentially what Power Apps is. But as I said before, there's different types of Power Apps. And in fact, there's three types of Power Apps. We've got what we call Canvas Power Apps, we've got model-driven Power Apps, and then we have what they call Power Pages, which used to be called Power Apps Portals. So Microsoft have a habit of changing names of products and things like that, but it's now called Power Pages. So the first type of app is Canvas Power Apps, which is all about digitally transforming business processes with low code. Power Platform has a visual canvas to help you design and build apps. So when we say it's Canvas, why we call it Canvas is because literally you start off with a blank sheet. And the way that you build the apps, it actually looks quite like PowerPoint, to be honest. If you imagine the slides down the left-hand side, like with a PowerPoint, you start off with those white blank slides. And that's the same with Canvas Power Apps. It's a complete fresh start, essentially. It's known as Canvas Apps, I say, because it provides that simplistic environment to create what you need. It's completely fresh and blank. So rather than using complicated coding or programming tools, you have an easy drag and drop interface programmed with Excel-like formulas. Now, there's a couple of pros and cons, and I'll talk about these as I kind of go through. With Canvas Apps, the main pro of it is that you can make it look and feel however you like. And we're going to look at plenty of examples of Canvas apps in today's webinar. You can style it up to look like your brand. You can use colors and logos and fonts and all sorts of stuff. And you can get the functionality to work exactly how you want it to work, because you are starting essentially from scratch. So this example here, all these fields and buttons and things like that, we've laid them out exactly where we want them to sit on the page. And that's in contrast to the next example we're going to talk. The next type of Power App we're going to talk about is model-driven apps, where we're a lot more locked down in terms of what we can do. So that's the main benefit of a Canvas app. But the downside, it's almost like a catch-22 in the fact that although that we can make this look and feel exactly how we want, and we're starting from scratch, building it from the ground up, the downside of this approach is, one, it technically takes longer to build than a model-driven app, because model-driven apps come with more like template layouts rather than Canvas apps where you're starting them pretty much from scratch. So it can take a little bit longer. And again, I'm not talking months longer, but it will take a proportionate of time longer than it would do to build a model-driven app. The other downside is, because you are building the interface yourself from scratch, you're more likely to run into issues of like something not working quite as you expected or something like that. And that's because you have to build all the functionality yourself. Whereas when we look at model-driven apps, there's a lot of functionality which is pre-built in. So things like creating new items, deleting things, and things like that. A lot of that functionality is already built into model-driven apps. So the second type of app, I say, is model-driven Power Apps. And this is all the catchline for this is to integrate with business data on mobile-friendly apps. Model-driven apps start with your data model, building up from the shape of your core business data and processes in a common data. So this is actually Dataverse that they've rebranded it to model forms, views, and other components. Model-driven apps quickly generate great UI that is responsive across devices. Now, this layout we see here of this model-driven app, it's all using these kind of blocks we see here, these big blocks. They're kind of that's literally the kind of types of blocks we can add in. We can add in forms, we can have in, and we're going to see some examples of this as we go through. We can add in forms and fields and things like that. But the overall look and feel of it is much more locked down. Now, again, going back to the pros and cons of this, a model-driven app, the pro of it is actually the user interface element of it comes together really quick, really quick. In fact, you actually start in reverse. You think about the data, and that's why it's called model-driven, because you're modeling the data of the system. You start with the tables and the relationships of the data that you're collecting, and then it basically almost auto generates a user interface on top of it for you. But the downside of that is that you can't really brand it up. You can't make it look how you want to 100%. But obviously, the pro of it is the fact that you've got a lot of built-in native functionality, which is just offered up to you. It's much quicker, I'd say, and easier to put together. And then the third type of Power App is what we call Power Pages. Now, the last two types of apps we've talked about, Canvas apps and model-driven apps, they are essentially for internal use only. So they are for staff, employees, people that have got a Microsoft 365 license inside of your organization. Whereas with Power Pages, you're essentially you're creating a website. Essentially, it's a website that can even be surfaced from Google if you wanted it to. It is a website that allows you to interact with external parties to collect information and then bring that back inside of Microsoft 365, inside of Dataverse, and you can process it. So quite often you can have Power Pages, which are external facing, things like application processing and things like that, or support ticketing systems, or all these different things that with your customers or external people, you might want to give them an area that they can interact with your business, either by submitting or receiving data or information, documents, files, things like that, without giving them obviously a license to come inside of your full organization. So Power Pages allow you to create external facing web pages essentially for extended engagement. It's formerly known as Power Apps portals. So again, the reason why I try and give you the previous names is so sometimes when you're Googling it, you can find more information when you're also including the previous name that it was known as. So it's a powerful web portal tool. So Microsoft Power Pages is a robust tool for building web portals. It's external facing and designed for external facing interaction. It facilitates the creation of secure external facing websites for users like customers, partners, and employees. It has customization and responsiveness built into it. So it works, as we can see here, on a desktop computer, a laptop, tablets, mobile phones, things like that. And for users, sorry, I've lost my place here now. So it is fully responsive. Engage broad audiences, so organizations can engage with a wider audience, share information, and streamline external interactions. So this can go both ways. So don't just think about this as a way that people can submit data to you. You could also use it a way of submitting data to them. So it might be that you have some customers, it's a customer portal, and you're offering them information. In fact, the example we're going to look at in a moment, it is exactly that. It's a membership portal that you can offer information to people via the Power Pages. again, it leverages Microsoft Power Platform, so it integrates seamlessly with the Microsoft Power Platform for enhanced functionality and data management. So all the data is stored in what they call Dataverse, which essentially is the database which sits behind all of Power Apps. So it means you can have a external facing page which is maybe collecting or processing data from external parties, and then you can apply, say, a Canvas app over the top of that information. So the Power Page is collecting it from the external people, and then you have a totally different app which your internal staff are using to process it, as an example. So a real world example of that is that we dealt with an organization which was helping companies when they were going into liquidation. So they had an external facing portal which was allowing them to collect information about that company that was going into liquidation, and then all information was sent into the background into a database, and then we had a employee Canvas app that they were using to process those applications, to put in more information and mark whether or not things were up to code and that sort of stuff and whatever. So some real world examples. So let's start digging in then and start looking at some real world examples of Power Apps. So the first Power App I'm going to show you is a Canvas app. And I should also sort of make clear that all of these are just the dummy, the first draft of the application. So I'm not going to be showing you real sort of production live, because obviously data concerns and things like that. So a lot of these are the kind of the initial draft proof of concepts that we've put together. And this app actually was built for the City of London Council. And the scenario that they had was they had their maintenance, gardeners, cleaners, people, basically the frontline workforce were still relying on pieces of paper. They were still going out to jobs and having to fill out pieces of paper, missing information, or pieces of paper would go missing and things like that. And what they wanted to do is arm them with a tablet that they can go out onto sites and jobs and things like that. And they could be given a task list of jobs they can go and do, but also flag where they see something that's not right. So say, for example, as a gardener, I go out to a job, and whilst I'm in one of the parks in London, I realise that maybe there's a gate that's hanging off its hinges. I could take a photo of it, log where it was, and that goes to the back office to plan as a task for the next day for the next person who's going to be on shift the next day. So within this app, I could come in and say, I'm going out, I'm doing, say, some maintenance work. I could select what park it is I'm going to. So I could say I'm going to Hyde Park. And then a list of sort of tasks can come up for me. So I can mark them off as complete, or I could say I could flag that there's an issue with a particular one. Now, the real kind of production version of this, it was a lot more detailed, and it also had the ability for people to take pictures as well built into it. So that's our first example of a Canvas app. As I say, very simplistic, but it just gives you a bit of a flavor of the types of thing that's being used. The second is actually a model-driven app. Now, this model-driven app we use, and this is just a draft version of it, but it's actually an app that we've built internally, which is basically for surveying all of our new customers. So when we get a new customer, they automatically appear in here. We can select that person's name, and what we will have previously done is we will have arranged a meeting with the customer to ask them some questions. So this is basically customer profiling our customers. So, oops, I think I've clicked on the wrong thing here. Let me just double click on here. There we go. So what it will do is it'll bring us to a predetermined form, which has got loads of questions in here about sort of the account. So how long has your company been in operation? What industry does it fall under? More information about the industry, purchasing behaviors. How did you hear about Balto? How does your company typically make purchasing decisions? So we ask these types of questions to our customers, and we can fill it out. And then that gives us a whole database of information which we can then use to surface up insights about our customers. So maybe where they're based in the world, or demographics, firmographics, their age, preferences on how they like to interact, what social media they found us on, and things like that. These are all different things that we've gone through, and we've used this form to capture. But as I say, this is model-driven apps. This is exactly what model-driven apps looks like, and it doesn't get much prettier than this. As I say, model-driven apps is very simplistic, and you can't change the look and feel too much. But if you're looking to quickly spin up a process which is capturing data and information, then this is a really good way of doing it. And the third type of Power App that we talked about previously is the Power Pages. Now, again, this is a real world example of one of our customers who's called Cairo. They are the Chartered Institute of Railway Operators. And essentially what they do is they have a membership. So people go and they pay to be a member of the Chartered Institute of Railway Operators. There are people working in the railways and things like that. And there's certain services, information, packs of things like that, and PDFs, magazine type things that are offered out to their members. But with this portal, you see, I've logged in. I can actually find this from Google if I wanted to. Actually, we can control things like this is flagging because this is just a test version of it. It's flagging that my membership has expired. So we could do things like if their membership has expired for a period of time, we could block their account. A little bit like a Netflix subscription, essentially. So if I wasn't paying my monthly fees, we could then stop that and cut that out. Because what's really cool with Power Page as well is you can also integrate a payment system. So you can integrate a payment system to buy products, or in this case, it's a membership. So you're paying for a particular membership. We can offer up information. People have like their own sort of profile page in this. They can put in their preferences. They can select what newsletters that they want to receive, what magazines, what events they want to attend, and things like that. So their personal preferences. Also, with this, it also tracks what they call their CPD, which is a career continuing professional development. Oh, there we go, continuing professional development. And this basically allows their members to go in and take surveys, quiz type tests to track their growth, their career over time, and they can also log things like training that they've been on and things like that. And actually, as part of this, what we allowed them to do is download all of that information as a pack. So actually, the members of Cairo, whenever they're looking for things like a promotion or getting a new job or something like that, they can download all of this in almost like a CV type of format to then take with them and say, look, this is all the training that I've done. These are all the kind of exams I've passed and things like that. And that's all generated from this. So you can see this is an external facing website. It's for members essentially. So they're offering services and materials and things like that directly from this as a website. But it is all built with Power Apps. It's built with Power Pages. All of the data is then stored in the background of Microsoft 365 in the database, which is known as Dataverse. And that actually, there are multiple they actually use all three types of Power Apps with this system. They have the external facing Power Pages. Then when someone applies to be a member, there's actually multiple layers of membership. And if you want to get all the way to the top kind of membership, you have to evidence what you're sort of doing in your day-to-day job and things like that. It goes through an approval process. And we have a Canvas Power App, which is basically goes to a board of people who do all the approvals of these membership levels. And they have a Power App that they can cycle through. They can put comments and notes and things like that against each of the different applications as they've come through. And they have, as I say, a Canvas app that processes that. They also have a model-driven app, which allows the admins of this portal to do things like chase up when memberships have expired and things like that. There is some automation which does that, but they can also go through and process that. Or if they wanted to go in and cancel a subscription or some kind of administration type of job, they have a model-driven app to go in and process that type of information. So that is our Power Pages. So I'm just going to jump to a couple of other examples now on the screen. So this is back to a Canvas app now. So this particular Canvas app is our rewards and recognition app. So the rewards and recognition app essentially is designed to boost employee engagement, general kind of people sort of happiness and benefits and stuff like that from the company. The way it works is you collect points. So you have here a list of predetermined activities that the company wants to reward. So, for example, if you presented at a learning meeting, you might get 5 points, for example. Or if you complete an e-learning module, you might get 10 points, for example. So there's things that your employer wants you to do, and they will reward you with points. There is then a leaderboard, so you can kind of have a bit of friendly competition to see who's getting the most points. Obviously, points mean prizes. So there are a set of rewards based on the points that you accrue over time. There are then prizes that you can choose to redeem. So once you've got the right amount of points, you can click on the redeem button and you can claim back that reward. That also goes through with a Power Automate workflow to the approvers to look at that particular sort of redeemed claim to say yes or no that they've qualified for it or whatever it is. And then, yeah, so essentially you can keep track of all of your points over time to make sure that you're sort of working towards getting one of these rewards. So the next type is, again, a Canvas app. And essentially what this was more like a training type of app. So they're building in a sort of quiz, a little bit of a kind of training. But the reason why I really like it is because it's so simplistic, but it looks really, really good. So the way that this sort of question worked is that actually, and you guys probably won't be able to hear this, but you can get it to sort of play a call. And actually, this company that was using this was they had a large contact centers, and they wanted to train as part of their onboarding process their new staff to listen to types of calls and then determine whether or not that this was actually a sort of a good call, so that you would trust that this caller, or trash, it's rubbish, it's no good. And then you can specify what it is, and then it will say, yeah, this was correct, or no, this is an incorrect answer. And you can just work your way through that kind of quiz. So there's just an example of how you can have a predetermined sort of set of questions, and then you could use that then to determine someone's knowledge level. I've seen this in so many different scenarios. You can make it look and feel totally different, but essentially it's nothing new in terms of sort of questioning staff and giving quizzes and surveys. I've seen them done for sort of security reasons and things like that. But you could do this with Power Apps, and you can make it look and feel exactly how you want it to feel. And in fact, actually, they went one step further, whereas they didn't want this to feel like it was a long-winded, boring type of process to go through. So they even integrated, and this is all done with Power Apps as well, they even integrated a bit of a game into it as well. So as part of the kind of quiz, every so often, it would allow you to go through and play this little game to collect points. So I thought that was quite a different, quite interesting way to keep things fresh, and keeping people engaged with a survey or questionnaire quiz. Another type of Canvas app is a visitor registration app. Now, we've all seen businesses where you go into the reception, into the lobby, and there is a big book on the front desk that you have to manually fill out who you are, who you're here to see, and things like that. Or you have to pay a receptionist to do that on someone's behalf. Whereas actually with Power Apps, what we've done is we've built this, and we sell a lot of these applications as like off-the-shelf type of things which just work on day one. And one of them is this visitor registration. So imagine you have a tablet, an iPad, or something like that, which you put on the front desk of your lobby. Then when you click on check in, and again, we can customize these fields as well. So they don't have to be these fields. You could add or remove any fields you like. You ask for the person's name, their phone number, their company. You could maybe put like their car registration plate into there if you wanted to, or whatever else it is. And the bit I think is really interesting about this is you can select who you're there to visit as well. So if somebody was coming into Valto to see me, they say, I'm here to see Dougie Wood. It will then take a picture of them, so you can get it to take a picture, so you know who it is. But the cool thing is, because you've selected who you're there to visit, it would then send an email. So in that case, it would send an email to me to say Joe Bloggs is in reception for you, and here's a picture of them. So especially from a kind of safety and security point of view, I can actually see who that person is who's there to see me in reception before I even go down there. So it gives you a level of kind of comfort knowing that the person in reception is actually somebody that you're expecting to meet. Then once that's been submitted, you can also have the sort of option to check out as well. So obviously this is all just dummy data, but someone can then go in, select their registration option, and then choose to check out as well. So they can check out from the system. Now, what we can also use that information for as well, because once you've got all that data, you've essentially got all the data of who's currently on site at this point in time. And in fact, actually, I've seen people use this same system for employee clocking in and clocking out, like a check-in, checking out type of system as well. And you can even do things like, now this is not part of the default product, but we can always do additional automations, like, for example, working out so how long someone was on site for. So if they checked in at 11 o'clock and they checked out at 1 o'clock, and working out the time between it, how long they've actually been on site. But with all that data, as I say, for both visitors and or employees, we then have a list of everybody that's currently in the building. So you can then have a list. So in a sort of fire evacuation type of situation, you've got a list of everybody that's currently in the building. And in fact, we've worked with people in the past before that then have a separate kind of application so they can mark people off as safe when they've been evacuated from a building. So let's jump to a couple more examples. Close off these. Here's another app that we offer kind of off the shelf, essentially. So we pre-built it and it's ready to go today. It is our leave request system. So with a leave request system, this is not only tracking holidays, but it's tracking all different types of leave from work. So the landing page essentially allows me to see the date period, so January 2024 to December 2024. I can see my holiday entitlement, so I can see how many days I'm entitled to, so my base entitlement. I can also see how many days I've carried over, so how many days that came with me from the previous year, and that gives me my kind of total entitlement. I can also see how many holidays I've taken, how many holidays I've purchased, as well as the remaining kind of balance of time that I've got. I can also see who my approver is, so who my approval for leave will go to once I submit it. And that's quite important, especially for people that are new to the business. If you're part of a onboarding process, it's great to see actually who are my requests going to. I can then create a request really easily by clicking on this create request button across the top. And then you can see we've got different types of categories. We've got holiday, which obviously has an entitlement, whereas something like sickness doesn't have any entitlement. We can add different categories to this as we like. So we've got things like working from home, maternity, paternity, authorized absence, study leave, medical, or we can actually have what's called toil, time off in lieu. And that does have a balance. You don't have any by default, but you can accrue it. So you could say, oh, I worked late one night, so I can put hours against it. Or I worked on a weekend, I'm going to add more time onto it. And then once you've got that balance, you can then call that off like it is a holiday. We can see my requests, so I can see all my previous requests in here. I can request time off in lieu, as I say. My manager area will allow me to see people that report to me and who I approve their requests, and I can drill down to see their entitlement and how much entitlement they've got left. And I can also see company holidays, so I can also see what days of the year that we have off as a bank holiday, essentially. So those days are not counted. Say if I was to book a holiday around Christmas and it included the 25th of December, that's a bank holiday, so it wouldn't deduct it from my holiday entitlement. Now, this is just the surface layer of what this app can do. I think it's really, really useful. Every organization needs a leave request system, and actually a lot of people are paying a lot of money for third-party leave request systems. Whereas actually, once you have this deployed, it's essentially there. It's something that's quite cost effective. So the other thing about the leave request is that the approver will get notified with an email, and when they or a Teams message, and when they go into the app, they can actually see things like who's off on that same day. So in a quick glance, they don't have to go through and compare the calendars or something like that to see actually are too many of my team members off on that day and things like that. You can just see who's actually off on that day to make that decision making a lot quicker. So that's our leave request system. The next app, again, which is still a Canvas Power App, but this time, Canvas apps allow you to build them either in landscape mode, which is what we've been looking at so far, or in portrait. So basically what it's saying is you design them to be what sort of device you think that they're going to be used on. So if they're going to be on tablets and desktop, you would start off with a landscape, whereas if you're thinking it's only going to be used on mobile phones, which the Expense app for us is only ever really used on mobile phones, we put it in portrait mode. So this is essentially an example of an Expense app. We can create a new expense by clicking the plus button across the top, and we can put in the date. So maybe this is my expenses for August. So I say from the 1st of August to the end of August. I put a summary in here, so I can put something like my August expenses. I can see who my approver is as well, which again I was saying is important earlier. Then we can choose to add in new line items. So we can add in to say, let's say for example, we're going on a trip or something like that. So it might be my train ticket. Department, so I work in the marketing department, and the category, it's transportation, and the cost is £150. And then I can click on add file. Now, if I was to do this from my computer, which I'm doing right now, it would open up File Explorer and I could choose a file. But the really cool thing is that if I do this on my mobile phone and I click on attach file, it'll also ask if I wanted to take a photo. So if I have all of my receipts from my trip on my desk, I could just take pictures, and then I can click on save and add new line item and take pictures of multiple receipts, essentially, so I can put that all together. Again, the way this works is once it's submitted, it will go to my approver. So in this case, it would be Hugh, go to him, and he would look over it. Now, in the email he receives, it has links to all of the line items and also all of the receipts and the sort of pictures essentially that have been submitted along with it. So he can quickly check that I've got everything I need for my expense request. Then he marks it as approved, and then it will send an email to our finance team to let them know that there's a new expense request that's been approved, and they will then pay me. And then once that's all gone through, I will then see a balance of what I've got open, what I've got pending, and what I've had approved as part of my expense requests. The next example, we're back to the landscape option of a Canvas app, but again, it's a Canvas app. And this is a sort of auditing type of app. Now, this is actually in the context of a factory, and essentially what they wanted to do is make sure that basically processes were being followed and things were sort of getting checked as part of their sort of audit process. So I can click on say new audit, and then I can select a question. So I can go through and say, are operators trained and qualified to work their station? Click on select, and that would then take me through to a set of questions. So in this case, obviously this is just proof of concept. Check that there are no parts either on the ground without identification, blah, blah, blah. So ask me a question and say, yes, this one's fine. Yes, this one's fine. Yes, this one's fine. Or no, actually, this one's got a problem. And then I can create a new action, essentially a new corrective action to fix that problem. So I can type in the name of the owner of the action, or I could have a drop down, or I could just another way that we've had this configured in the past before is you could select a type of area or topic or category, and that automatically selects who it should be. So if, say, for example, this was a fault that we found in a factory and it was in a particular area of the factory, let's say next to the conveyor belts or something like that, if I selected it was a fault with the conveyor belts, it might auto select who the owner of this task to correct it would be. We can then set a target completion date, and in other, let's say, more advanced versions of this system, we've even had it automatically select target completion date based on how severe the problem is. So if it's a category 1 or category 5, or if it's marked as severe or critical or whatever, it can set different time due dates based on that. Then we can give it a title and details of the corrective action, and that goes back into the kind of the audit log, which is where people can use another type of Canvas app to process those corrective actions and make sure they're followed up on. Let's leave here. And then the final app, if anything, this is probably the most simplistic app out of all of them, but it's probably one of my favorites. Now, this app was built for an organization, which is a very large enterprise level organization, and they had a lot of problems with their materials being used and having copyright issues. So they had a legal team in-house which were inundated with questions all the time about, can we use this material in this scenario and things like that, or are we going to run into copyright issues and that sort of thing. So what they did is they built this self-service app which would quickly identify common questions. So the types of questions that these legal teams would just answer on the phone or via an email. They'd just be doing them all the time. They're almost like a flow chart to help weed out what are the problems, what are going to hit copyright and ones which won't. So as a user, you would go in and you would say you would start this journey, and then you can see it then ask you how questions. So how to reuse content from scientific publications. Is it a self-help guide? Is it e-learning? So it says a self-help guide, and then it goes through all of these different options to say whether we're going to use it internally or externally. So we're going to use it externally. Whoops. What are you reusing the article? So the article has been requested. The article will be used for promotional purposes. Is it possible to use a link to the article instead? No, it's not. And then you can see here it's flagging saying, stop, don't do this. We're going to run into legal problems. Now, again, when they kind of launched this, they had other kind of buttons which basically said, submit a ticket, or we'll get in touch with you, or something like that. Or here's a phone number, give us a call, sort of thing. So these are the types of things you could do. So they could quickly weed out the ones which they know categorically will not be a problem. And that actually removed a massive chunk of time for them. I think they reduced by about 60% of their incoming queries using this application, purely because they could quickly just remove all the things which they knew were just time and time again they were getting asked about. But again, as I say, take this with a pinch of salt. This is purely just a sort of self-help guide that could be used for anything. There must be loads of scenarios inside of your organization where people are following a process, or they're asking people the same questions all the time, and this will help you do that. And essentially it's really simplistic the way it's kind of been built. It's a bit like one of those books, if you remember as a kid, where you could kind of choose your own ending to sort of say, oh, you're walking through a forest. If you want to go left, go to page 2. If you want to go right, go to page 7. It's basically just like this. So depending on where you're choosing you're going, it's choosing your own kind of pathway through it. So I really like this app. I think it's a great example of how simplistic a Power App can be, but the real difference that it can make to an organization. So I'm just going to jump back into my slides. So how do we work then? So realistically, what are the kind of next steps if you're interested in Power Apps? So we offer a free consultation. So we offer a free 1-hour consultation. If you want to book that in, you can reach out to the guys at Cobweb, and they can basically help facilitate that. But we offer a free consultation with our Power App specialists. So we talk to you, find out basically how Power Apps can help you and how help it benefit you. The next thing that we do is we would do a deep dive workshop. So the aim of the Power Platform workshop is to help your company understand the Power Platform and all the products available within it. So we're not just going to be talking about Power Apps. We also want to show you the benefits of things like Power BI, Power Automate, and basically show you the full suite of what automation and basically the digital transformation that can be provided from Power Platform. The key outputs of the workshop is a report that outlines the following. So outline the overall objectives for why you would use Power Platform, create a robust and strategy, basically rollout strategy for each of the product sets, and a roadmap including timelines and key dates, and a phased approach with a fixed pricing for any applications that we were to build. But as I say, this all starts with a free 1-hour consultation. So if you want to get that booked in, reach out to the guys at Cobweb, and we can get that booked in for you. So we're going to just go now into the last 10 minutes with any questions that anyone's got. So I'm just going to go into the chat area. So if you've got any questions, feel free to put them into the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature to ask any questions.
It's all quiet, Dougie, but thank you for such a wonderful presentation. I say the possibilities are endless with Power Platform, and we're glad to have met a great partner at Cobweb for doing it. So I think without further ado, if there's clearly not many questions, thank you everyone that's attended. We will be sending out the recording and the slides that go with it. Obviously, they won't have the sort of real-time examples in there, but if there's any further interest in that, of course, I'm sure we can show you some more of those on a follow-up call. Our team from Cobweb will reach out in the next few days to see if there's something that's in there that's piqued your interest, if there's an area that you're struggling with in terms of your processes, or time consuming or administrative, or never quite work properly, and to see if there's a potential to work together to fix those problems. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you, of course, Dougie, for a wonderful presentation, and I'm sure we'll all speak to you soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.